So for the case study in this module, I'd love to share the story of Albina Ruiz, a Peruvian woman who founded a social enterprise called Ciudad Saludable, which means healthy city. And the reason I thought that she'd be a really great case study for this module is because her whole thing was about talking to people, about literally going to the problem, was rolling up her sleeves and getting her hands dirty. And so Albina Ruiz grew up in the jungle in Peru and not in the city. And she always dreamed of going to Lima, the capital of Peru, to study engineering. And so her family saved up and bought her a one-way ticket, and she went to Lima to study engineering. And one of the first things she noticed when she got there was the garbage. She just couldn't get over it. She couldn't stop thinking about it because where she came from, there was no garbage. People were really careful. They didn't have a lot of stuff. They reused everything. There wasn't a lot of disposables in the jungle. And when she got to Lima, there were literally mountains of garbage. And she just started asking why. And she wasn't satisfied with the answers that she got. And she noticed that a lot of these piles of garbage were actually in low-income neighborhoods. And some of the answers she got when she asked why were answers that were like, oh, poor people like garbage, they're used to it, or, oh, the trucks don't fit into the alleys in these neighborhoods, we can't go pick it up. Or, oh yeah, they're not paying taxes, we don't need to pay. Just like answers that were not satisfying her. And she was a student at the time, and she decided she was just going to go to these neighborhoods and talk to the people. So she did. She followed the problem. She went to the mountains of garbage. And she found that there were people there who were actually on the garbage, picking out the waste and trying to make a living by selling certain parts of it to recyclers. And they were in a really hazardous situation. You had sharp objects and rodents and, other dangers, and it was just not a good situation. And she talked to people, and she realized that that these waste pickers actually were part of a community. They collaborated together, and their situation was just not good. And there was a lot of things that could get better. And that's where she saw her contribution could be. So one example of the things that they changed together was that these individuals used to sell the waste that they picked to people, like a middle person who would aggregate the waste and then sell it to the recycling company because you needed large volumes of waste to go straight to the recycling company. So Albina helped the waste pickers raise money for storage sheds, so they would store the waste until it aggregated enough. And by aggregate, I just mean build a large enough volume to sell straight to the recycling factory and cut out the middle person so that they were able to improve their livelihood. They bought uniforms and gloves and equipment and started conducting this in a more safe and professionalized way and at a larger volume and with more efficiency. They started talking to other stakeholders like the municipality, the city government. And eventually, over the years, they were able to collaborate with the municipality to become service providers, where they would not only collect the recyclables in their neighborhood, but also they would go to other neighborhoods and collect recyclables by asking people to sort waste and place them in recycling bins outside their houses. So they really were elevated from waste pickers to service providers. And over the years, they built their relationship with the government, with consumers, with others, and eventually participated in writing a new law that incentivized municipalities across Peru to work with waste pickers as service providers. And so that's really an example of how Albina used a simple community-based approach to talk to people, to go to where the problem is, to just immerse herself, be part of it, and then see how she can piece together different pieces of the puzzle. And the driving factor behind their success was that they involved various stakeholders, like the consumers, the government. And this helped not only their social enterprise thrive, but also it positioned them as leaders in the field of waste management. So Ashoka has this really cool visual that shows different levels of impact in social entrepreneurship. And they start with direct service, which is what these people were doing, right? Like they were working directly with the recyclables. Then scaled direct service, which is when you expand and they started providing services in other parts of the city. And then systems change, where it's no longer about direct service or scaled direct service, but you're actually changing the system. And that's what Albina and Ciudad Saludable did when they helped rewrite legislation. And then the outer shell is framework change. And that's when you're changing complete mindsets and the way that people think about this problem and the whole nature of the problem. And over time, the service providers and members of Ciudad Saludable have done just that. They speak regularly at government workshops and seminars around the world and in Lima and in South America. They created a toolbox to help share their process with other countries, and they collaborate with peer organizations around the world. There's actually like a global network of waste pickers. So they really went from direct service to scaled direct service to systems change to framework change. And the founder, Albina, she handed over to a new executive director eventually, and she became the vice minister for environmental management. I had the opportunity to speak with her recently, and she said that initially she was really unsure about this role, but her team and her community encouraged her to go for it. And she was able to work even more on the systems change and framework change level in that position. And what she said to me was, we have many social entrepreneurs, and we need more public entrepreneurs. So she started working with government workers to implement innovation. And that really goes back to the heart of this course, is that like you don't have to start something new to create social change. You can be already working on something as a service provider or as someone with lived experience. You can have a job in a company or a government. But what Albina really told me was when we can all work together, the social entrepreneurs, the government workers, the community members, etc., that's when we can create change. So that's why I really like this case study of Ciudad Saludable, because it shows how you start with the community, you work with the different stakeholders, and by doing so, you create a viable offering yourself, which Ciudad Saludable did, and also you participate in changing the system and changing the framework.